I'm speaking to Heather Whittaker and Shelley Petit. Shelley, you're chair of the NB Coalition of Persons with Disabilities, which is currently working to draw attention to the situation faced by you, Heather, and your 15-year-old son, Justice. Thanks for joining the NB Media Co-op today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
It's with media attention that changes happen because it's so important. You guys play such a crucial role in this.
Well, to start with, Heather, could you explain your situation, your son's disabilities, and the kind of support that he needs?
Well, there's a lot to his disability. It's called Dravet syndrome. He's the fifth case in New Brunswick when he was diagnosed at the age of 18 months. And he's currently 15 now, so it's a lifelong terminally ill condition. He's constantly in regression. And he has a lot of overlapping conditions that play a big role in the type of care and supports he needs. So it's not just epilepsy. So it's like a rare form of epilepsy, but it's not just epilepsy. So like he has he's nonverbal, so he can't speak like at the regular for a regular 15-year-old or whatnot. Like cognitively, he's between a newborn for sleeping, right up to a 3-year-old as understanding. So different parts of his brain is at different ages. So it's hard to meet him in the moment for needs. He also has an autism diagnosis, and he's with hypersensitive sensories. So he's constantly in fight and flight mode. And so he consistently needs reassurance that he's safe. And he needs a one-on-one attention at all times. So if he does get a little rambunctious, because his attention span's not very very long, I might need to attend to him too, because I'm doing this all on with him too, right? So I'm trying to divide myself. So anyway, but we have a doctor's medical letter stating what he needs for in-home supports, as well as in the community supports as 2-in-1, because you need at least 2 people for various reasons in the community, like if you were to go to a doctor, or even just to go out for a ride to the store, or out to a park, to a zoo, or any kind of community outings. He's being homeschooled this year because I decided that it was the best interest for him to have in home supports where his regression has got to the point where he's social avoidant, to the point where he won't even, it takes him over 45 minutes just to leave my apartment door just to go to the front door of my building. So his anxieties are to the point where it's causing so much hardship on him for inconvenience that could provoke an uncontrollable seizure that he has, which usually, and the seizures they would go into like a status epilepticus, it's called. So that would be a seizure over 5 minutes and he loses oxygen, which would be fatal. So for his own well-being, I just feel it's best for all supports to come in home rather than go out in community. Mm. And like I say, I have his neurologist agrees with all this through a letter that I've put in for social development, right? So.
Right, and so the neurologist has requested, in particular, respite care from the Department of Social Development. Can you explain what respite care is and why it's important, and how the department responded?
Okay, so as far as my understanding, respite care would be a break for a caregiver that is on call 24/7 with their child with special needs, because they need for like safety or different various reasons that they need eyes and monitoring at all times. I'm a single mom, so I have to do everything all on my own, and so for my own mental health and my own self-care, if I want to go to work, if I want to go to school, if I want to do anything other than just attend to my son's needs, I would need a break. So that's why it's very important. It's important for him to have a different set of eyes, for a little bit of a change in it, where he doesn't, he's more so lives an isolated life in the home, because where his anxieties are too extreme to go out in the community. And so, and in community events also, they have to be kind of like like monitored and regulated so that's out as fast as possible and in as fast as possible. Like even so like when we don't go to the doctor anymore. We do online video calls with the doctor just to support justice, because it's like the neurologist's office isn't at the hospital, St. John Regional Hospital, and it's way too much going on, and for justice to go to that doctor, to the doctor's hospital itself, right? So we live an isolated life in the home a lot of the time by ourselves.
Yeah. And Heather's being modest. Like even social development, I don't think, because I've been involved in meetings, understand the hours that this mom puts in as a single mom. She's up with him. He's up now at 4 a.m. most days.
Yeah.
And she's up. And then she's caring for him all day. He goes down around 8 or 9. He is not sleeping well because of the housing situation they have. She has to monitor him all night while he sleeps. Because, as I said, she had to call me last week and say, what do I do if my son dies tonight while he's sleeping, right? What do I call? Do I start with that? She didn't know because it was that much of a possibility. And it still is again tonight because of where social development in New Brunswick housing and the government has left this family. And she works with him all day, and she's doing his education, and she's doing his OT and his PT because they're not coming in providing these services like they should, and trying to bathe him and she doesn't have 5 minutes to herself. So then at 8 o'clock when he goes down, then she's starting prep work for the next day. She's sending out letters to the government, to other people looking for help, trying to find housing, and then social development had the audacity in one of our meetings to say, well, we could send you this program, or you could research programs that would help your child and let us know. Where is she supposed to find the time for this? That's where she needs respite care. And I even said, you want her to do PT and OT? I want you to provide her more respite care where you're going to give her 2 hours a week to research programs to help them, and then training time for her to administer them at home.
Could you just, you mentioned the term OT and PT. What are those?
Occupational therapy and physiotherapy. And even he would have benefited from speech therapy with a system like a PEC system or something like that. But they just decided, because he didn't fit into a mold. And I know this because I taught for 17 years before my disability forced me to stop working. Children that don't fit into these little molds and check marks, we can do this or this or this, they don't get the services they need. They're sat in a back corner of the classroom. This is in the inclusion province. He has been failed by the system. This family's been failed by the system from day one, and people should be ashamed. And people need to hear this story, because it's just, this could be any one of us tomorrow, and this shouldn't be happening.
How did the Department of Social Development respond to the request for respite care?
Okay, so they told me it was my responsibility. Like, they will give me 20 hours, but I gotta find somebody on my own, through whatever channels I can find somebody they classified as a private respite care workers, because it's privately, not like by myself or whatnot. And so I contacted or like companies that do these things, like, or whatever, and that provide respite care or PSW care and stuff like that. And it's like way over, it's like 29.47 an hour. And I'm on income assistance. I can't afford that much or whatever at 20 hours, say $30 an hour. I mean, it's way over, what I even get for an income for a month. So I had to look into some apps in regarding, and put my own ad up. I put my own ad up on Kijiji, and Marketplace, and different, advertising. And over the last year, I've had hired and trained 4 individuals, but the situation that I always run into is that the government or social development says that they will reimburse me for out-of-pocket expenses that I pay. So I would pay $20 an hour to a private respite care worker. It's $400 a week. But the thing is, I'm only keeping them for several weeks to several months, depending on the situation. Like at first, it was only a few weeks because the reimbursement time wasn't coming in properly. Like, so it would be like about 4 to 6, 8 weeks variations or whatnot, be being reimbursed from what I pay. So then I over the free I had 3 different private respite care workers, and then that after that last one that decided to leave because they were still waiting, after 2 weeks of providing care and not being paid, they said I can't work anymore. I was like, well, it's the same thing, same pattern, kind of like happening all the time. I decided to go for 6.5 months without respite care, and put money away out of my child tax, and out of my income assistance to be able to have $800 as a float, so to speak. So I would be able to provide a few weeks of care while waiting, but it still wasn't enough. And the last person I had, she was generous enough to stay several months of not being paid. And then all of a sudden, there in mid-July of this year, she decided that, oh, well, I can't keep doing this. And I totally understood, right? So I said, well, we'll let you go. And I haven't had anybody in the home now since July. I've been doing everything on my own.
And this is a very common story as well. So people either choose respite care through private services like this, or even if you are allowed a home care person, let's say you're paraplegic or you're in a wheelchair or like that, and you provide these services, you can either go with a company that's registered with social development and they pay, or do it private services. And if you do private and you have to wait to be reimbursed, we see people all the time, 6-8 weeks, they still don't have the check from the government. And when you're receiving $866 a month to live on, you don't have spare money waiting around to do this. These care workers can't wait. We see people going without food and other services because if they don't have a care worker, they can't even get out of bed. And this is, again, like, if the government can't, how can they not direct pay these people and have it taken care of? We have these new things called computers, and we could put like numbers in online and they could pay out immediately. Like it's ooh, wow, new stuff. But it's incredible how slow it is, and half the time you have to send your paperwork in by fax. Fax. Who has a fax anymore? And this is how they work. And then they put the blame back. So eventually, when we started advocating with Heather, they came back and said, okay, well, we will provide respite care again but we only pay $20 an hour. It's 29. So somehow you're gonna have to come up with an extra $10 an hour out of your own pocket to pay these care people. So at 20 hours a week, $200, that's her entire check a month. Right. And like there's not even common sense. Like, where's the common sense in that? How is she supposed to do that? So then they gave in and said, well, we'll do it, we'll pay it, or they're going to pay the entire amount. The first person that came, she said, we want female, not male, because of things have gone on. They send a male, or they tried to send a male, and I think he stayed one day and decided it was too hard. So the system is just made to set people up for failure. And to give up and go, screw it, I'm just not going to use the service, when we know this service would benefit justice and would benefit Heather, because one of these days her body's just going to go, I can't do this anymore. I can't go 26 hours a day on a 24-hour day for my son.
That's called burnout, right?
Yes. And how you have not burnt out is beyond me, because, and I know how, it's because you love your son so much. But what would happen if she got COVID this year or RSV? Like, I just don't know what would happen for this poor child. And this is neglect from the government. And it's ridiculous, because even then, when they said they would pay the full amount, they then want these reviews at 30, 60, 90 days. And because of all of Heather's experiences with this department, she automatically saw that as a red flag. Whether it is or not, we'll see. That after 30 days, they're going to try and remove it, or 60 days. And we're like, if you go and give this service for 30 or 60 days and then take it away, you've caused more harm than good. Always.
And am I right in understanding that so initially it was covered at $20 an hour for a service that cost $29 an hour?
Yeah.
But the social development department of the government of New Brunswick eventually started paying the full amount. How long did it take before they began paying the full amount?
They just offered, after the multiple multiple human rights cases against them what are moving forward. Now they're willing to pay the full amount.
And then so the agreement was for the case plan or whatnot through this company was done on October the 20th. I still don't have a physical person in my house.
Right. Because they can't find someone that will work with him.
And are they still? Is the government still requiring you to pay upfront and apply for reimbursement, or are they paying directly now?
No, they want to pay directly for 30, 60, 90 days. So every 30, 60, 90 days, they will review if the care is still needed or not for justice to have support in the home for respite.
And they have said, or maybe adjust, maybe we need more, maybe we need less. Well, we're certainly not going to need less. But we can't even find, like these companies can't provide someone to do the 20 hours. And then what they're going to say at 30 days is, well, see, you're not using it, so you don't need it. And then they'll cut it. This is
well, Monday will be Monday would be 30 days and it's not even in the home.
Yeah. And then this will be Heather's fault that she doesn't have respite care in the house. This is how we get treated.
Is the provincial government reimbursing you retroactively for all the money that you spent?
No. They don't even pay interest if you have to go into your credit card and use a credit card to cover costs because they haven't reimbursed you for previous services. They won't even cover off the interest on it.
And it sounds like it was an uphill battle getting to this point where they are, maybe that's an understatement, to get to the point where they're actually covering the full amount under these conditions. Is that typical, Shelley, of these kinds of relations with the government? Can you just kind of describe the hoops that people have to jump through?
Often people will apply for a service and they're told no, and they just go away. And that's what the government relies on. That's what it really feels like to us. They will say, oh, no, but this is how it comes across to us. When I became disabled, I was given a sheet of paper and said, here you go, figure it out. Right. So you're dealing with, so whether it's a child that's born with a disability or someone like myself that develops later in life, they're the experts. They're supposed to be providing us with recommendations, suggestions, what to do, where to go. They don't. They kind of throw this paper at you and say, there you go. That's why the coalition developed, because there's all kinds of people that are on CPP disability who are not getting their $200 credit that the government put into place last October. So we tell them, go back to your care worker and say your social worker and make sure you're getting that, but they won't give it retroactive. Or they're not getting their housing subsidies properly covered, or they need to move because they've been rent evicted, but their housing subsidy says it's for, $850 for a 1-bedroom, where you can't even rent a room in a house for that. So that's all we do is fight. And it's exhausting. And then people give up and they rely on people giving up. And we keep saying, no, keep going, because the squeaky wheel gets the grease. And there's proof. There's some parents that have like services like this because they know their MLA really well. And it shouldn't be that way. The same services, according to the way documents are set up, we should be getting the same services, regardless of where you live in this province, for your disabilities. And we do not get that in New Brunswick. I couldn't even imagine living in a French community. If you're English in a French community or French in an English community trying to get services, or when you throw in people who are Black, Asian heritage, other cultures, and with a disability, they see it even worse. They're getting it from both ends, and it's not good. We should be ashamed as a province. We really should be.
Heather, how much do you figure that you've paid out of pocket to take care of justice, just for the respite care side?
I would have to sit down with numbers and take some time off the top of my head. I would not know.
Could you hazard a guess?
Too many,
I'd say probably 10. I bet probably in the 10,000 range.
Yeah,
at least.
That's a lot. That's a lot of money.
and and you mentioned earlier that you receive $866 a month. Could you talk about your situation? What's your kind of overall income or situation that you're trying to make ends meet, living in St. John, taking care
Yeah.
of your son?
Well, I receive, well, my income assistance check is it's $9,099, so a dollar off 1,000. Why they made it not a full number, I don't know. And I receive $808 for my child tax disability. So it's a child tax and his disability. So it's two checks in one, and it comes 808. And so roughly just under 1,800 I live off of for rent, food, anything, clothes, all the basic needs that I try to. His medicine now, since recently he's been put on for his extreme anxieties. He's been put on CBD. That's going to come in pocket. That's just started this week. So it's roughly going to be about $300 out of pocket because there's no coverage for CBD yet in New Brunswick or in Canada. So, I mean, that's just another thing, on top of everything else. And I do have a portable rent subsidy because of his conditions and stuff. But then there's the housing situation where I need adequate living. Like, you know what I mean? Even though I'm in New Brunswick housing, it's not adequate for his needs.
Right. So $1,800 a month for two people, and this is a very difficult situation trying to make ends meet.
Oh yeah.
Right. Yeah, because she can't go out for groceries like you or I might. So, well, I can't either, but she can't go out for groceries. So she has to pay the additional fees to have them brought in, or for medications, like all that stuff. And it might seem like a small amount, a convenience amount for some people, but for a lot of people with disabilities, it's a necessity amount. They know that living with a disability, and there's been multiple studies out of, like, from Oxford, in JAMA, and all this showing that to live with a disability runs between 30 and 40% more in your costs yearly than without.
You were just mentioning a moment ago that he's 120 pounds. He's a big kid now at 15 years old. So with issues with maybe anger or aggression at times, how does this
and aggression, agitation, no emotional regulation whatsoever. He doesn't even know. I'm trying to teach him that through homeschooling now this year, just because I feel like if he can recognize some of his aggression mostly, or if he can recognize that he's tired, then he'll go to sleep, right? Like, so when he starts yawning through the middle of the day, usually a few hours after being up, because we get up so early, like around 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, by 8 o'clock, he's exhausted. And so am I, but honestly, but he's exhausted. He's starting to yawn, and I'll say, "Are you tired?" No. And so he won't ever admit that he's tired. So I'm trying to get him through picture recognition of other picture, like of a kid yawning or a kid laying in the bed, or just to try to have some understanding. And when we're tired, we go and lay down, because he thinks, because it's daytime, his belief is that if it's daytime, he has to be out. Or when he goes to bed at night and he wakes up at 3 o'clock in the morning, or 12 o'clock, and whenever he may wake up through with the middle of the night or whatnot, as soon as he wakes up, his belief is that he is to stay up. He's not allowed, he can't go back to sleep.
And it's there's a lack of services in New Brunswick for anyone that has any form of dementia who is a child. So we have a lot of members that have brain fog, like myself, or stages of dementia or traumatic brain injuries. But services we have are set up for seniors in this province.
Yeah.
And if you call as a younger person, they say, "Oh, we don't do that. We just work with seniors." And it's a real problem because it affects, we are the majority population at 26.7%. And that's 15 and up. They don't count children, and children are a huge part of disabilities. And we can't get these services because they've been set up black and white. Well, you have to be 65 to get this. How many people would benefit from these services, and how much easier would it make life, and potentially make, we always look at it as a lot of people with disabilities want to be able to work. They want to work. They want to contribute. They want to participate. But if we can't get some of those basic services to help us, we're never going to be able to work. And so instead, we're going to sit home and collect assistance, right? And then people throw us into those welfare people or those social assistance people because that's where the money comes from. And we get the same payment and we can't work because either we can't get the treatments we need, there's no accessible transit. I mean, Fredericton's now getting rid of dial-a-bus. They're getting rid of the 2 unionized drivers and putting non-unionized drivers. So we know how safe that's going to be. Or you get to a workplace and it's not accessible, so we can't work. What would happen if we could get some services for our brains? What would happen if Justice had been able to have some of these services when he was younger? Would Mom be able to go out in public with him now and he have exposure to more fresh air? Like, there's so many what ifs because of these black and white regulations that are made by able-bodied people that do not understand disabilities.
See, I can work. I'm eligible to work, but where I don't have proper supports for my child, it prevents me to stay on income assistance and be his full-time multi-hat OT, PT, respite care, doctor, mom, and everything he needs in the home because I need to be all those for him, right? So it prevents me from going to work. It prevents me to better my own life and bettering his through better income. And a lot of the services, like Shelley said, my obstacles are where he's 15 and well, even at younger ages, I've always been told your son isn't qualified to have any of the proper supports he needs in home because he's not 19 to 65 because everything is classified between 19 to 65 ages for in-home supports for disabled people. So I have to do what I have to do because I'm not willing to put my child into care because I feel like he should be with his primary family and not being, and give the supports, that he needs rather than be going in a care home and kind of splitting the family up.
Right. And even those between 19 and 65, they're institutionalized. We talk about the lack of it. They're re-institutionalized. And it's horrible. It's horrible what they do to her. I've got a mom in Moncton right now. She's 74 and she's caring for her 48-year-old son every day who is mentally about 3 because she won't put him in an institution. And she was recently told by social development and one of their third-party services that they farm this work out to, when she made a request for a better, like an accessible bathtub, that this wasn't something her son needed. She just wanted to do something nice for herself. It's like, and they put it on paper. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, they wrote this in a letter. And it's like, how rude, indignant, ignorant does a person have to be to say something like that to a mom at 74 who is still trying to care for a son that's 200 plus pounds, who thinks acts like he's about 3 through no fault of his own. And she just wants him to live with some dignity.
Yeah.
People should, it just floors me every time.
It really sounds like a set of dilemmas. And Heather, you are in NB housing. You have a portable rent subsidy. Could you talk about, I guess first, how much do you pay for rent per month, and what is your housing situation?
Well, what I pay for rent a month through my MB portable rent subsidy is only $57. And because I have a DTC certificate for my child, and I also have the other 30% for the portable program itself. So there's an extra, it's the 60% of my income because of my son's disability eligibility to add the extra 30%. So that's why it comes up to 57. But the current living environment isn't what you would say to building code for air quality. It's over, what was it? It's up in the 60s and 70s of humidity in my home. recently in was it the 30th of September, there was a broken pipe up above me, up in my up over in my storage unit, and there was about ankle deep water at in places. Anyway, I had cleaned it all up the first time, like as of the morning of when I woke up to it, because like I wake up 4 o'clock in the morning, like with my son, and we wake up, we walk into the kitchen, and there's water everywhere. So I'm using towels and sheets. I don't have a mop. I'm kind of old school. I wash the floor by hand. It's only kind of like it's stretching and it's kind of therapeutic, I guess. Anyway, so I'm using all my towels and my sheets to clean this mess up. I messaged the landlord to let her know what's going on. On her way out the door to go to work that morning, she came up. She's seen the place. I showed her the water. There was water coming up from the flooring, the tiles from the flooring. And then the laminated flooring is kind of like blistered in spots in my son's room and in the hallway, because from the water that came through. Nothing's been replaced. I am back now. I had, after what, well, 5, maybe 6 weeks at my mom's. My stay kind of came to an end there or whatnot. I had to come back here. No fault. I didn't want to. I was terrified. And because I know what it was before we left here. And then, the extra humidity now from the broken pipes in the walls and stuff, and then not being, taken out and fixed and replaced. It's just more health concern, right? And where he's got no immune system, he's susceptible to respiratory infections, from bacterial and fungi and viral, any kind of stress from anxiety or illness can provoke uncontrollable or unpredictable seizures, which are life threatening. And from his type of epilepsy, it's a big anxiety. I'm like constantly in anxiety state because I'm just waiting for a seizure to happen, because I know I'm just waiting. I'm just waiting for that. I guess it's fear, I guess you could say.
Well, and on top of that, they cut out a large piece of gyprock that was full of
Yes.
mold. We have no idea how it was disposed, but considering that Heather had a camera in her place, so when she was staying at her mom's, there was video taken. And this is how they cleaned the air. They put a shop vac hose and left it running. And that is how they dehumidified the place and cleaned the water out. So I'm not a contractor, but hey, I know that doesn't work. Why an industrial if an industrial dehumidifier had been brought in right away, they probably could have absorbed a lot of the water that got into the floor. Those suckers are strong. Shop vac, not so much. So there is now water under the laminate flooring. We know that because of the way it's blistering. On the tiles, water was squirting out of the grout. That's not going to dry on its own. That is organic material. There is mold growing there now. That puts Justice's life at risk. Prior to them moving out, Heather was developing rashes on her body that went away immediately when they moved into her mother's place. So we know that there's something else in the air there. Then they cut this large piece of gyprock out, probably was just carried out, not even covered to be removed. We don't
No, it
know.
wasn't. It was put in a garbage can, and it sat in the garbage can until they
So,
took everything out.
so mold spores everywhere. So that spreads mold spores, right? Like that's not how you remove molded gyprock. Then they left the wall piece open, and then they just brought her piece of plywood to lean up against it recently. Like
Yeah, and the plywood wasn't even big enough for the hole, so I had to tape some cardboard because the mice were getting into my apartment.
mice, yeah, from the walls coming down to the apartment. I mean, and cats are, we're not going to get into the dog cat fight here, but yes, cats are extremely intelligent animals. They know what to do. When they're in dangerous places, they get. Cat, who was Justice's emotional support animal, was in the bedroom where there was quite a bit of water and, it was just going to dry on its own and be fine. And he went flying out the window in the window screen. And now Cat is gone. Thankfully, someone was very generous and was able to provide another emotional support cat for Justice, because there's been too many transitions and changes in his life. Um, we know that most people don't deal well with change, but children in these situations do not deal well with change at all. I mean, just that open wall hole, unbelievable. And when we finally pushed enough and the city of St. John get involved, the building inspector said, we're just going to go right into inspection mode. So they've come to do an inspection. We believe we're waiting on a
They're
report.
supposed to. No one's been here as of yet, but they're
Oh, they
supposed to.
haven't been there yet.
It's
Okay.
open. It's an open case for
Yes.
minimal standards, but nobody's been here yet. And that was the beginning of October that I was told that
Yeah.
was all going to.
The Deputy Minister of Housing has been involved and says a solution is imminent, but what that is, we don't know. And that
Right.
only happened because Jill Green, Minister Green's admin assistant, is amazing. She should be running the department. She is so good. I called and spoke to her, and her shift, like her day was done, but she was just horrified. And she says, I am not leaving until somebody is on this. And boom, 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 she got things done. Without
We
her, we'd probably still be trying to fight just to get Minister Green to answer us.
So also there was, I called the RTT or
Oh,
whatnot,
yes.
and they said that I can't put a complaint in and what's going on here with the water damage and the humidity until a building inspector or air quality test by a professional is done. Even like, because I had asked if I were to buy my own monitor for humidity, they said it wouldn't cut it in a sense as because it's not professional. They need
They
a
wanted
professional.
her to hire her own contractor to go in and say that the building wasn't safe. Because she makes so much money on social assistance. Of course she could do that. The system is made to keep people trapped, and it's
It is,
just
yeah.
ridiculous. They need to stop thinking about, oh my God, one person might try and cheat the system. And remember that 99.9% of us are honest and want to do what is best for our health. Because if not, down the line, it costs the medical system. We want to be able to work, which means we need to be healthy and have accessibility. We're not looking to cheat. We want to be equal participants in society, but they treat us like bloody criminals. And then social development left her living in this place even prior to all this, knowing that her son has a wheelchair and she has to go upstairs to get out of the apartment.
Yeah, so way before the flood even happened, like the pipe breaks and stuff and all the excess water that came in my apartment, I had put in 2 different medical transfers, one in October of 2022 and another one in April of 2023, because my son's medical conditions regressed and now he needs a wheelchair. He can't walk long distances and he can't walk stairs, and we are in the basement. And so, like I say, prior before flooding, I'm trying to get out of here even just for his mobility issues to be supported. Now the flooding and the humidity is a factor.
Yeah.
Wow. So to summarize, the apartment floods. This raises concerns about your son's health, about your health, about mold in the air, affecting his ability to breathe.
Yeah.
And affecting your health.
Right.
You go and live in a room together in your mother's apartment.
Yeah.
You shared a room.
Yep.
While waiting for I wouldn't even not renovations, but repairs to be made.
Clean up.
For cleanup.
Acknowledgement that it was a disaster. That's what we were waiting for first. Just acknowledgement that there was a health concern there, that there was an issue.
How long were you at your mother's apartment?
Just
Almost
over
6
5 weeks, not quite 6.
Oh.
And Heather had literally a spot on the floor wide enough to fit her body. That's it. Most people would be, but she's like, this is, I have no choice. This is what I have to do for my son. And
So I went and I took my climate change money that I received, and I went and I bought him a twin bed and a bamboo mattress off Amazon. So he would have arrangements so he wouldn't be sleeping on an air mattress, for better posture and and better sleeping arrangements to make sure like he's getting more of a quality of sleep. But in that room there was a huge freezer, so in between the bed and the freezer it was not even wide enough for a cushion for a couch, and I was sleeping on the floor in that small space.
It sounds very difficult, and then meanwhile his condition is worsening to the point where he needs a wheelchair, and the stairs to your apartment become unmanageable. How common is this kind of thing, Shelley, with respect to people with disabilities and NB housing, the kind of
Oh,
struggles that you hear about?
we hear struggles every day. So most people, I would say 30 to 40% of our members that have accessible housing through MB housing units, they're not accessible. So we have people that can't get into their kitchen if they're in a wheelchair, especially people with wheelchairs. They can't get in their kitchen. So then they have home support workers. Like this is just the audacity of it, right? So you can't, person A cannot get into their kitchen or they can't shower alone. So then they get a home support worker that's coming in for 50 hours a week at being paid through the government. The government's paying the company $25 an hour because the apartment's cheaper than putting them into an accessible unit. Well, if you put them into a fully accessible unit, they would be able to get around. They would be in better shape. Um, they could be more independent, which is better for self-esteem, which keeps mental health issues down. Um, and it would free up more home care workers to work with our seniors that need them, or children like Justice that could use more help, right? So it's just, but they go, oh, but that unit, that's we only allow $1,200 and that unit is $1,205, so we can't do it, right? It's just things like that. One person who couldn't get in her kitchen, who, because of policy 6.1, the household income policy, could not live with her fiance because then she would lose all of her benefits. They would call her daily and say, oh, well, your care worker can't come. Can your fiance come over and provide you food? Oh, he's not good enough to live with, but when you can't do your job, you want him to step in all the time. I had another member who went 7 weeks without a home care worker, and she can't do laundry in her unit without her home care worker because it's downstairs. She flipped her chair multiple times because in the unit there's like a ramp that goes down and it's unsafe. And her unit is not accessible. And then the ramp out front bounces like this. Like it scares me to death when I go over there to her place. I'm bouncing, walking. I couldn't even imagine a wheelchair. And we hear this all the time. Or people are put into units that, they have vision impairments, but there's so many jets everywhere that they're always banging into things and getting hurt. And so this is very common. And then if you want to move, or worse, if you have to move because of a situation like this, I had a member in Moncton who was on the second floor of a building who needs a walker to get around from fibromyalgia. They've left her in this unit for years, even though knowing that she needed to move. And the man who sexually assaulted her is 2 doors down. They know that as well. The elevator breaks on a regular basis. So you could get into the elevator and go down and then find out you can't use it to go back up, which means she can't get to her unit. And it took 3 years of fighting to get her moved to the first floor. That's all we could do was get her to the first floor. But then you have to find a way to pay yourself for the move. When you're disabled, you often can't move big boxes and stuff by yourself. And there's no money there to help you move.
Yeah, that's one of my questions. Like, so if I can find a place, or when I find a place, because the biggest thing is nobody wants to deal with NB housing. I've searched high and low from Moncton to Fredericton to St. John. I'm on all waiting lists in all three cities, and nobody wants to deal with the NB housing.
As soon as they hear the word NB housing, all of a sudden the apartment's rented.
Yeah. Or no, or it's not accessible. That's another thing they'll say. No, it's not accessible. Automatically not accessible anymore.
Yeah.
So an added burden on in addition to the very well known conditions in the housing market in New Brunswick and in many parts of Canada, conditions of housing crisis, lack of affordable housing.
Right.
There's also a added stigma attached to having support from NB
everybody
housing.
Who's on a rent subsidy has to be a drug addict and a welfare bum and blah, blah, blah. And these are the notions landlords use. So why isn't the government doing more work to educate them? If I was a landlord and knew I was having someone coming in that I've got a guaranteed check coming every month, and going and talking to a previous landlord where these people lived and they've lived there 15 years and not caused a problem. That's a good tenant. That's a good tenant to have. But nope, because there's this notion. So the government, when they got out of actually having units for MB housing, their own proper units, this disaster started. They were warned back then that this is what was going to happen. 5 years ago, they were told again, this is happening. They didn't want, well, we know Premier Higgs didn't even want to admit it till, it was into the rent cap before he would even say that, yes, there is a housing crisis in New Brunswick. And now we're really stuck because there's no one to build units. Even if we brought people in from outside to help build units, where would we house them? And we're going into the cold. They're not even opening up shelters to December because the numbers are so astronomical. Like, I don't know, are they waiting for a few people to die off, hoping maybe a few homeless will die off and there'll be less to put in shelters? Like, honestly, I don't know where their thinking is. Could you have slept outside in that last night? That was cold in a tent. That's unreal. This is Canada. We take care of our people. We don't leave them like this to suffer like this. This is wrong.
This is what I always thought anyway. This is why I find that it's so bizarre, like me being in a situation, and not just me, but seeing people in tents for so many years and no help. I'm like, what? I thought we lived in Canada, not in some third world country.
And since this is a systemic issue, systemic lack of housing, I think you've spoken about systemic ableism
Oh,
in
systemic ableism is alive and well in New Brunswick.
in New Brunswick. I guess what do you see as the thing or the top priorities, things that need to change?
Right
Shelley?
now, they have to say, okay, we have to give out more rent subsidies. So I don't know if a lot of people are aware. The government gives out 25 to 30 new portable rent subsidies per year. There are 10,000 names on the list. So if you're someone that just got on the list, 300, 350 years from now, you get a rent subsidy. Well, that's helpful, right? That, people think looking at it, because this is what social development says. Oh, but it's more than just money. We have rent subsidies. Yeah, but you're not going to get one unless you already have one. Then they're taking them away from some people. If someone is forced to move and they can't find a place and they go 3-6 months and they haven't been able to find a place they take the subsidy away and say, well, you obviously don't need it. You're not using it. So we're going to give it to someone else. So a person finally finds a place and thinks they have a subsidy and then finds out they don't have a subsidy. Then we know that there are units that are sitting unrepaired. Most of them, like places that get denied because it doesn't have a GCFI receptacle in the washroom. Even I can put that in. That's not hard. We've heard of units, people that have found a unit and then social development goes to look at it and there's a stain on the countertop and it gets declined for that. Or it needs a paint job. Well, you know what?
Yeah,
If I
like
have
mine,
a choice
like
between a paint job or living on the streets, let me move in without the paint job. We'll figure that out down the line. There's about 150 to 200 units that the government pays for every month that are sitting vacant. Open them up. Use this money. There are government buildings that are vacant. You can turn those into partial units for now. They're starting it in Ottawa. There are things we can do, and we shouldn't be selling. Having Doug Ford on TV in Ontario bragging that his buddy Premier Higgs has introduced him to New Brunswick companies that make prefab apartment buildings now. So it's basically like the old war homes at the end of World War II. You go pick an apartment building, they're prefab, you put them together, and he's going to use these to put up buildings in Ontario quicker. Why aren't we using that in New Brunswick first? Why? Would that not help? Why isn't the government using those to put up apartments right now? And why are they not making sure that every new build is built under universal design? And then that way, a person with a disability, an able-bodied person, our vets, and our parents who need to age out at home with dignity can all do that in these units because they work for everyone. They're cheaper to build because you have less studding with wider doorways and hallways. They work for everyone. We won't have all these units being held just in case, and we can house people with dignity. Wouldn't that make sense? Like, those are things they can do. It's going to take them 10 years to get the stock back up. In the meantime, increase your subsidies you're giving out and increase the amount, because it is not the people of New Brunswick's fault that you sat there and covered your eyes for 20 years and pretended there wasn't an issue. Yeah, I'm mad, in case anybody was wondering.
That's true though, like, because if I have a place up in Fredericton or whatnot that I was going, that's the rent. I needed like a higher max for my portable rent subsidy to cover this building. They were going to accept MB housing. However, it's more than what my max allowance is.
By $200, they're willing to let this woman and her child be on the streets for $200 a month right now. I think that's ridiculous. Or they found one that was within the range, but it was 3 bedrooms instead of 2. They wouldn't allow that either.
So if it's not 2 bedrooms on that max amount that I have, I'm allowed to. If it's like 3 bedrooms, I was denied because it's 3 bedrooms and not 2.
Right? The bureaucracy has to go. These are people's lives. They're not numbers. They're people. They're human beings. Nobody woke up this morning and said, hey, I want to be disabled. Hey, I want to be on drugs, because most people who are drug addicts on the street are drug addicts because the system sent them there with all the non-caring.
Mm-hmm.
It's what happens. We know it.
It's definitely a very difficult situation, and I hope Heather, you and your son find appropriate housing soon.
Me too.
If a landlord is out there and sees this, you reach out to the mbcpd.org. I'll set you up with Heather.
Yeah, I need a home that's adequate, for Justice's needs, right? Like, that's my number one priority, and then after that would be services through social development, right?
So a public call out there for any landlord who might be watching this to contact the NB Coalition for Persons with Disabilities. Reach out and help step in.
Yeah. And if they want to talk more too about universal design and why they should be looking at that, because here's the thing, the way we're building, in about 20 years, we're going to have a glutton of units again. I can guarantee you, if you do universal design, they'll always be rented. Always, always, always. But if you continue to build these luxury high rises that don't allow for accessibility devices, your units will not be rented down the line.
We only have a few minutes left. Heather, anything you would like to add, or Shelley, before we wrap up?
No, I think I've said everything I need. I need a home and services, but and the situation, and I really appreciate you taking the time, David, to hear all of what's going on in my life, I guess, for advocacy for my son.
Yeah, and just again, thank you for covering this. It's such a huge topic. We would like, anyone who reads this, I would like you to reach out to your MLA and to the Premier, because Premier Higgs, in case you don't know, receives an additional $55,000 a year because he is the minister responsible for persons with disabilities. Please ask him, where is the MB Accessible Act? The draft should have been in the legislature by September. They have not had a meeting in over a year. Where is our Accessibility Act? We were gonna be the 4th province to have one. We're now going to be the last province to have one. Where's the act? That act alone would provide us with some more security and protections. Where's the act? That would be huge.
Well, I want to thank you both for joining me today, and Heather, above all, for sharing your story.
You're welcome.
I've been speaking with Heather Whittaker and Shelley Petit, who is chair of the NB Coalition of Persons with Disabilities. Thanks again for joining the NB Media Co-op today.
Anytime. Thank you so much.